Hello and welcome to another pen video from me, Penultimate Dave. So I have here another inks comparison video, and this is Gold Inks comparison number 1. So I think let's swab up some of these inks. So I get a lot of questions on how I do these ink videos. So I decided I would add this to the front of each of the ink videos. I put links in the description, but I know some of you watch this on TVs or mobile devices, so you don't get to see this. So first off, the paper is the number one question I get asked. What paper do I use for these ink comparison videos? So this is the original Tomoe River. This is 52 GSM, and it is the white, not the cream, the white. Where possible, I try to go for the white because the cream can actually change the color of the ink just a little bit. So this is Tomoe River 52 GSM in the white. A lot of people get confused as well because I have what looks to be a grid on this page, and it's actually an Oxford Optik pad. These are the pads that I actually use when I'm writing my writing samples for pen reviews or in my currently ink. So they have these little squares up here. I just use that because it's a good guide for me. When I put this very thin sheet of Tomoe River over, I can actually see squares, so it helps me write a little bit sort of straight on the page. Not always, but sometimes it does. The other thing that I also have is I have a bottle of water, plain water, and I dip my nib in here. So for consistency, I use the same fountain pen, or I guess it's not a fountain pen, it's using a fountain pen nib though. This is a 3D printed pen from William Shakour in the UK. So he prints this material 3D, and it has a number 8 size Bock nib which I can unscrew, and you can see there. So it is just a dip pen holder for a number 8 size Bock nib, and the idea is I want to have consistency with the writing sample. So I use this, I dip it in the ink, I write, and then I will dip it in here and I will rinse the nib off several times and I will dry it, and then at that point I will then go on to do the next ink swatch and the next writing sample. So there you have it. That's how I do my ink swatches. So I just wanted to show you that here. Now on to the ink comparison video. So the first ink here we have is KWZ Honey, and I know what you're going to say, it's not a gold ink, although if you look at the writing sample there, you will see that it is actually not far off being gold. So I have included it in this video. So I think let's do an ink swatch here, and you can see here that this is quite a nice sort of golden brown, and it really is turning into more of a gold as you get a little bit more lighter there. We'll do a second pass over the top half just to show the difference between a wet or broad or a dry or a narrow writing nib. And this is KWZ, and it is Honey. And I have to say that this is a goldish ink that I keep going back to, and I have used half a bottle of ink, but that's probably been in about 5 years. It's not an ink that I use massively, but it is an ink that I do keep going back to because I do like it. So I've not yet bought a second bottle. I'm trying to hold off because this is one of these bottles that I haven't particularly gone through massively in 5 years. Like there are other inks in different colors that I'll go through a bottle a year or maybe several. The next ink here is KWZ Old Gold, and this is a little bit more of a goldish color. So we'll do an ink swatch here, and you can see really that to start with, this looks quite similar to KWZ Honey, and as it gets further on, you can see it getting lighter and lighter. We'll do a second pass over the top half, just to show the difference between a wet or a broad and a dry and a narrow writing nib. And this is KWZ Old Gold. And about 5 years ago, I was on the hunt for a gold coloured ink, and I eventually landed on this one. And I wanted a gold ink that didn't have shimmer. I had actually tried Diamine Shimmertastic Golden Sands, which, as much as I liked, I found that it wrote dry and would clog up because it's got particulate in there. So I wanted something that was more on the gold colour, and I'd had a KWZ Honey for a while, which was pretty good, but I looked for a few more gold inks and eventually settled on KWZ Old Gold, and I think you can see that this is actually quite nice. The next ink here is a Robert Oster signature ink, and this is Gold Antiqua. So before I actually settled on KWZ Old Gold, this was one that I researched and thought that this would probably be the one that I really wanted. So we'll do an ink swatch here. But as you can probably see as it's going on here, this is a little bit more of a greenish gold. Not like maybe Rohrer and Klinger Alt Goldgrün, but it's still on the greener side of gold, I would say. So we'll do a second pass over the top half. Now we'll just show the difference between a wet and broad, or dry or a narrow writing nib. But you can see there that this has got a little bit more of a hint towards a greenish colour or tinge there. So this is Robert Oster. And it's Gold Antiqua. But it is a nice gold ink, and it was just a gold ink that I hadn't settled on. It's more of a darkish gold, and I think I was, because I liked Diamine Shimmertastic Golden Sands, that I wanted more of a lightish gold colour rather than a darker gold. But as you can see there, I'd say that this is coming out a little bit more as it dries as more of a darker gold ink there. The next ink here is Pilot Iroshizuku in a Hoe, and this, I have to say, is it's not a gold ink, but it's an ink that I do associate with gold. And I'll show you here. It's a little bit more of a brownish ink, I guess. So we'll do an ink swatch here, but you'll see here that it does have that like light, sort of really gold tendency there. So this is quite a nice colour. So if we do a second pass over the top half, and you'll see the difference between a wet or a broad or a dry or a narrow writing nib. So this is Pilot Iroshizuku. And it is In a Hoe. Now, unfortunately, In a Hoe, at least as I record this video, it has actually gone end of life. So if you really want this ink, then you do need to seek it out and get a bottle as quickly as possible. There may be a few retailers that still have a bottle. You might be able to find a bottle on eBay, or maybe at a pen club that somebody will trade or is no longer wanting. Maybe they don't like the colour. But it is an ink that you will have problems getting hold of. The next ink here is another Robert Oster signature ink, and this is a new ink that I got, which is Robert Oster Aussie Gold. And I'm trying not to buy many new inks, and I did replenish some of my inks recently. I did buy 9 bottles of ink, and that was probably 8 bottles too much. But 5 of those bottles were actually replenishing bottles that I already had, so there were only 4 new inks, and this was one of them. And I have not tried this yet, but I have seen good ink swatches online, so let's give it a try. So this, you can see here, is quite a light gold colour. Now, I didn't think it was going to be this light, but let's see. We'll do a second pass over the top half, and you'll see the difference between a wet and a broad, or a dry or a narrow writing nib there. But this one, I think, is going to be interesting because this is going to be quite light. So this is Robert Oster. And it's Aussie Gold. But that is quite a light gold ink. I was thinking that this would be a lot more darker. I think I was toying between African Gold and Aussie Gold, and I decided I would try and get Aussie Gold, but actually, you know, as that's drying, that's not looking too bad. So maybe once it has dried, that will be a nice colour. And then the last ink here is an ink called from Vinta, and it's a Cult Pens exclusive, and it's called Whiskey Gold. Now, I hadn't realised it when I bought it, but it is unfortunately a shimmer ink. And I really wasn't after a shimmer ink, so I'm going to have to shake the bottle a little bit just to try and get that particulate moving around. But we'll do an ink swatch here anyway. I do find, though, that this has a lot finer particulate than some of the Diamine Shimmertastic inks. So we'll do an ink swatch here. Now, if you really want a sparkly gold, this is going to be it. And I have to say, I've inked this up a couple of times in one of my pens, and I really, really am liking it. So we'll do a second pass over the top half, and that may show the difference between a wet and broad, or dry or narrow writing nib. Unfortunately, it is a Cult Pens exclusive ink, and they are sold out of it, at least when I record this video. So I've actually put a notification on for hopefully when they get stocked back in. I'm hoping they will do. So this is Vinta, and it's Whiskey Gold. But that is, for me, quite a nice gold-coloured ink, and it is one that I am really liking at the moment. So I would like to get maybe a few more bottles of that ink if I can. So I think let's now take a look at these inks now that they have dried. Now, I say dried because the first ink here, which is KWZ Honey, still hasn't dried, and I do find this a lot with KWZ Honey. It is quite a wet ink, so if I'm writing in a wet nib, then it will be it will take a long time to dry. So can you see the difference between a wet or a broad, or dry or a narrow writing nib? Definitely you can. There's a huge difference here in contrast. Can you see any shading? There is shading going on in the pulled area, not a huge amount. This will certainly, once fully dry, will be a piece of area that's going to shade. Now, is there any sheen? Now, there is a little bit of sheen around here and around here as well. There is sheen on this ink. In terms of the writing sample, though, you're not seeing a huge amount of sheen there. But you do get a little bit of sheen on KWZ Honey. So if you want a goldish honey coloured ink that has a bit of sheen to it, and you don't mind that it will take a long time to dry, then definitely check out KWZ Honey. Now, if you want to look at a slightly more goldish ink, then KWZ Gold or Old Gold is probably the better. Can you see the difference between a wet or a broad or a dry or a narrow writing nib? Yes, you can. Is there any shading going on? There is definitely a lot of shading in that pulled area. Again, though, it does have a little bit of a tendency to not dry as quickly. It dries quicker than KWZ Honey, though. Now, is there any sheen going on here? Yes, you can see sheen around these areas. So this is more of a sheening ink. And you can see there that the writing sample there is certainly lighter, a little bit lighter than KWZ Honey. So these are two very nice gold or honey goldish coloured inks. And these typically are the ones that I go to a lot. There is also, the next one is Robert Oster Gold Antiqua. And can you see the difference between a wet or broad or dry or narrow writing nib? Yeah, you can definitely see a bit of difference there. Can you see shading? There's shading going on here in the pulled area. Not as much as maybe KWZ Old Gold. Is there any sheening? It does have a tendency to sheen a little bit, normally around these edges, but not a huge amount of sheen there. But the writing sample there, though, is actually really quite nice. So for me, Robert Oster Gold Antiqua, if I really want a gold coloured ink in the writing sample in a wet nib, then Gold Antiqua probably is going to be the one that I go to, and I'm down. Well, actually, on all three of these, I'm down to about half a bottle of ink on each of them. The next one here is Pilot Iroshizuku in a Ho, and this has been my more go-to gold ink. It's a little bit more on the darker side compared to Robert Oster Gold Antiqua in terms of the writing sample here. Can you see the difference between a wet or broad or dry or narrow writing nib? You definitely can. A huge contrast of difference there. Is there any shading going on? There's some shading in that pulled area. Is there any sheen going on? Again, I want to say a little bit more so, not around the edges necessarily, but more around this pulled area. There is a little bit of sheen. Not a huge amount, no. It's not an ink that really you're going to expect a lot of sheen from. Actually, most of these are not. You're typically going to see more sheen on blues and purples and blurples than maybe a gold ink. The next ink, which is a new ink for me, is Robert Oster Aussie Gold, and I have to say, actually, I am liking this. Not for the actual ink swatch per se, but the writing sample, and I'll show you that in a minute. But can you see the difference between a wet and a broad, or a dry or a narrow writing nib? Yes, you definitely can. Is there shading going on? Maybe a little bit here in the pulled area, but not a lot. Is there sheen? Definitely no sheen. But look at the lovely gold writing there sample. It almost looks like it's got shimmer in it. And I just want to double check the bottle here, because I'm pretty sure it does not have, it's not one of these shaken shimmers. No, it is just a regular Robert Oster bottle. So that's an interesting one. And I actually like that writing sample probably more than the other gold writing samples. And then the last one here is a Vinta, and this is a Cult Pens exclusive called Whiskey Gold. And as I said, I didn't expect this to have shimmer. It was more of an impulse buy. I wanted to buy an ink that had the name whiskey in it, and this one did. And I hadn't really done my research to understand it was a shimmer ink. So when I actually unbottled the ink and inked it up in a pen, I was a little bit sort of disappointed it had shimmer in, because I don't use a lot of shimmer inks, and I just wanted a plain gold ink. However, I've inked this up in a cartridge converter, I put it in an Auto pen, and I'm really loving how it writes. So can you see the difference between a wet or a broad or a dry or a narrow writing nib? Yes, you definitely can. Is there shading going on? There is in that pulled area. Is there any sheen? No, but you do get some very wicked gold shimmer there. Now, these, you can see it in the writing sample there as well, that this is quite a beautiful coloured ink. Now, the particulate in this, I am finding, I would say it's a little bit finer than Diamine Shimmertastic. I typically find Herbin or J. Herbin particulate the more cloggy, and then Diamine Shimmertastic less cloggy. And I know a lot of people find it the opposite way round. And then this one I find even less cloggy than Diamond Shimmertastic. So I would say that this is actually a really good ink. It is an exclusive ink, and it is at this moment in time sold out. So I have actually already put an email alert on for when it comes back in stock, because I think I will be buying a few more bottles if I can get hold of them. And it may be that it's a one-off batch of ink, and maybe we're not going to see a restock. But I do hope Cult Pens do get that in, because for me this is actually quite a nice ink, and there's at least one, if not several pens that I would like to ink up with this ink. So there you have it. That's my Gold Inks Comparison number 1 video. If you like any of these inks, do let me know in the comments below. Likewise, if there are any other gold inks you think I should check out, then do let me know in the comments below. That's my Gold Inks Comparison number 1 video. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next pen video. Bye-bye.